Welcome, 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 everybody. We're sorry for the delay, but we are here this morning. I'm Elektra Porzel, and this is Liz Geyer. And Liz, you want to tell us about what collaborators are? Welcome, welcome, everybody. Sorry.
It's okay. So, well, it's great to be with everyone this morning, or if you're watching from another country later in the day.
Welcome, 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 everybody. Sorry for the delay.
It's okay. Uh, we just wanted to say that if you're here with us for the first time, CreateAWorld is this beautiful space where there are several collaborators, Elektra and myself being two of them, and where we engage in being in conversation with each other. Um, for any of you coming to find us for the first time, um, you might want to just think about as if you were coming to our homes and being, coming into our kitchen for a meal and sitting down at the table with us and just being in conversation. Um, we're raw. We don't even know exactly what we're going to be talking about. So, if you're joining us for the first time, we started CreateAWorld because we were really passionate about wanting to be in conversation with each other about the significant times we're in now. And we wanted a space to be with what there is to be with around what's rising in our world today. And we are just sharing what's happening in our own lives through our own experiences and discovering what there is to discover around what's happening in the world. So we we are also sharing through the field of Tantra Maat. And in the field of Tantra Maat, there are several principles that guide us as we're in conversation with each other. Some of those are that everything is part of everything else, and that everything operates on behalf of everything else, that everything is in relationship with everything else, and everything is always moving to the next greater whole, and that everything has a place. And so Electra and I were talking, and today, we're still in the midst of the holidays, and sometimes it's wonderful to be with our loved ones, and sometimes it can be a challenge to be in conversation with our loved ones, where we're in gathering with people we know and love, but maybe we haven't seen them for a while. Maybe there's some tension, some challenges in our family relationships, or even in our friend group relationships. Sometimes friend groups, gather during the holidays. So we wanted to be in conversation about, well, how can we give everything a place? Because that's my favorite tenet. How can we give everything a place when we're gathering together and in conversation with each other? How can we be with each other in compassion and in a space of love, even if we don't necessarily agree with each other on everything? So, Electra, I'm going to turn it over to you because you had some thoughts about that.
Well, welcome. We have my cat now behind me, but
Oh, yay.
yay, she's here to join us. One
Yes.
of the things, Tantra wrote a blog recently, which was called Once We Were Beings Existing in Relational Fields in Our Drunk Lake with Creation. And I think that that's the title of it. So I would suggest go ahead and read that because it's excellent about the idea of being in connection with others, creating conversations or connections that are life enhancing and life generating. Here's a phrase that begins, it says, true connection arises when we honor what gives life and vitality to another. So if you think about the conversations that you've had over the last month, because we've all been in the midst of different holiday connections, right? When is that a thought behind what you speak? I was listening to the quantum bioengineering. They have a spiritual values meditation they're doing every morning until I think mid-January, and today's was sincerity. So if you think of being sincere about giving life and vitality to another, I would say that probably is not foremost in our minds when we're even in just regular, there's no stress conversations. Another point she makes is that we tend to treat the other person as an object. That we have patterns of objectification, not just of things, but of each other. We no longer see each other as living, breathing expressions of creation, but as roles, labels, or functions to be assigned meaning based on what we hold them to be. So, in other words, we made up our mind already about what they may be thinking or they could give us in an interaction. And we relate only relative to their role. And I think it's a very different way for us to start thinking that the reason I'm in communication with somebody is to create connection or deepen connection, but it's always this, is what I am saying life enhancing? Am I open to really hearing another side of them? You know, I was at our Christmas day, and let's see who was there. There was my daughter's in-laws were there, friends of that of the larger Sharma family was there. My son and his kids were there, and so do I talk only? And I'm trying to think about what I actually talked about. But I talk to each person according to their role, I think. I talked to her mother-in-law around what us grandmas, think about. And I'm wondering, how could it be different if what we do, and think about it for yourself. Who was at that party that you went to or the celebration? And how might that conversation be different? Now, we titled this thing Communicating with Love, because we think love and compassion are one of the entry points into really recognizing the full breadth and depth of the individual we're talking to. Liz, what strikes you about that? The stuff that I've talked about.
I think I have to go back to, I was in a gathering. I'm a Girl Scout camp director, and one of the camp directors offered her home for a holiday luncheon. And it was, I have never really done anything like that, been in a gathering like that. And it was just directors. Um, and it's interesting. It always kind of starts out with moms in relation to their daughters in that kind of a situation. And I was very quiet until later when we got past that piece. So it's moms in relation to their daughters and what their daughters are doing. And my children are grown, so I didn't feel like I could really be in that conversation. But once that was out of the way, then we started to just talk about our own experiences in life. And the whole room changed. It was the energy in the room literally changed. And just in listening to each other's conversation about whatever experiences we had had, or of course, because we needed to find common ground, we went back to camp because that's what we all know as a collective. Um, just we started to kind of bounce ideas off of each other, and and underlying that was it was all positive because people's individual creativity started to come out, so it was all life enhancing conversation and excitement because one person would say something, oh, I tried this, and then all of a sudden, that of course that stimulates ideas coming up, and so when we got to common ground, um it was much easier to connect in with each other. um and then I'll go to being with my sister-in-law and her children, and there's an easiness in being with them, um, and an authenticity. There's to me that's key, to being able to be in compassion. I think because my sister-in-law and I have very different ideas about things, and through the years, we have come to understand and accept each other's differences and to celebrate those differences. Um, and so there's that connection there. So I, I guess for me, when I'm with whether it's family or friends, I guess I don't really feel like I'm in that role, right? I'm not in role of friend or mom or sister or aunt or whatever. I just am so eager to hear from their heart, right? Their what gives them life, whomever in conversation with, that I'm like a little puppy dog sometimes when I'm with them. However, there have been moments when I've been with my children this Christmas where there was, some friction. And in those spaces, I think I just went into my heart and just was trying to be just with them as a human being rather than as my child or as my partner or whatever. Um, I'm going to have to consider that because I don't necessarily think role anymore. Like, what role am I in? Although I'll name a role if I know I'm going to be in conversation with one of my children. I'll say, as your mother. So yeah, I do dip into being in that role. So put my mom hat on now. Uh, but
But what
even
about the
from
role that they are? That you're relating to them as a daughter, right?
yeah,
So that was the point, is that
right.
we may come from a role, but we also segregate them, like we only relate to them relative to that role that we see them in. So
And
is that happening in conversations?
I think so. I think from their perspective, probably. It feels very boxed in
Well,
when,
that's the point. That's the point that
yeah, it
they
feels so
say
boxed in that
here.
and they, we're so programmed, right? I do notice that about my children in particular. And even my nieces and husbands, that they do feel, it's like maybe they're not safe. They don't feel safe to go out of the parameters of, okay, what can I safely be in conversation about that won't spark anything kind of thing, right? Rather, I mean, I'm pretty open in my conversations with most people, so um I'm not I'm not necessarily nervous about sparking anything outside of the realm of what's safe. But I do notice that. I do
Here,
notice
listen to this. This is a paragraph from her
that.
blog.
Okay.
The challenge lies in how we become habituated to engaging through filters of perception. So that would be your niece is having a filter of perception about you rather than through
Mm.
relational fields of presence. So really being present in the moment with people. Instead of listening to each other with curiosity about what is life enhancing and life generating for another, we assess their words, actions, and even emotions as static things, objects to be categorized, judged, and dismissed. In doing so, we miss the essence of the other, the animate reality that longs to be seen, known, and honored.
Mm.
And I think
I don't, yeah.
it screws your head a little bit.
Mm, it
I have
does.
to say, am I relating? Am I open to knowing more about them, of the fullness of them, than just the role they happen to be at the moment, whether it's a family member, whether it's someone from the office or the friend group that you work with. It's really suddenly, like you said, you felt boxed in. When we start to realize it, we go, am I really in converse, opening up to the fullness of them? I think is what I'm thinking of. I remember once we were having a big family dinner for some holiday years ago, and there was a table of young adults, teenagers, and that. And I went and just started talking about what I was doing. And my daughter comes to me later and says, "Mom, they think you're really weird." But it was like I just felt like I wanted to talk to them about as me, not as their auntie, and somebody older, but just in that. But they weren't. Their response was, "She's weird." So but there is that. Like, how do we do that? How do we have compassion for ourselves as well as the other in opening up to all aspects of them instead of the only one that we know them as? I think it really does. For me, you kind of got to wiggle out of that box and see them just as who they are, the fullness of them. Like, I think most of the time, I would actually agree with her that I may be very sincere in the conversation I'm having, but that doesn't mean that I have opened up, let's say, doors of communication to talk with them beyond the way that we know each other. So the question would be is how do we do that?
Yeah.
How do we, whether you know them as your child, friend, member of a group, we really do. And you even said it when you were with the Girl Scouts, the conversations about daughters was not an interactive, right? It was
Right.
just,
It's kind of a reporting in kind of
yeah,
thing. And,
my daughter's still doing okay. So how could we
and
do that differently?
yeah. Hmm. I'm thinking back to a conversation I had with one of my nieces where she she's working at a business where she is not being honored for the role that she is playing. And so she's looking at getting new employment at in a different company. And so I was listening with curiosity, I guess, um, and excitement because so not as a, not as an aunt giving advice or anything, but I was just listening with curiosity. And I don't know, there's this underlying, for me, an underlying excitement about listening to who she is as a human being and what her thoughts are about moving about the world, So,
That's that
it-
opening up to the greater of her.
yeah. So I was all over it because I was thinking, well, of course, not judging or anything, but being in the space of, well, here this company has this gem of a person working for them. So, here I'm on my judgment around the company. But yet at the same time, um, in the same breath, thinking, wow, her quitting would allow her to travel. um, and see more of the world. I mean, she travels. She and her husband travel a lot. They do a lot of really cool things. But just give her that freedom, and she'll get snapped up wherever she is. But just in thinking of her being free to move about the world, and she's a very positive person, as is her husband. They're adorable, and they make friends with so many people all over the world, because they do travel a lot. So, yeah, so just looking at them, from a human being, just another human being standpoint, with no expectation, I think that's another thing. Oh, I can't hear you.
I had myself muted. That's why you
Ah,
couldn't hear me. No, I'm
yeah,
just
go
saying
ahead.
you really are living that from that example of this just coming to be present with another human being and enjoying what is life enhancing about them.
Yeah. And being in conversation about what's possible too. And so I'm wondering if we came, wearing the possibility hat. Let's just say, I don't know
That's a
how
good
else
one.
to say
That's
it.
a good one.
But yeah, wearing the possibility hat in every conversation we had, of, well, what's possible in this exchange with whomever we're sitting with at the time. Um, what's another nugget that I can draw from maybe this person that I've known all my life, kind of thing, or known, my sister-in-law, gosh, what, 50 years, almost 50 years now I've known her. Yeah, almost 50 years. And so what new nugget uh could I extract from her? And I'm always learning new nuances of who she is. It's so fun. We were playing with astrology this time. And she's a Scorpio, so she's fascinating. And so, I mean, that, yes, that is a box, astrology. Yeah, but
But it's not a box. It really, I mean, it is a box in that she's always going to be your sister-in-law, mother of your nieces, you know,
right.
wife of your brother. Um, but it sounds like at the same time, you're just curious about her as a person. So
Mm-hmm.
this curiosity and discovery, I think, is probably key
Yeah.
to coming to wanna to opening up to all of them so that they feel comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in sharing more of the fullness of them. if you're
Yeah,
genuinely curious, saying like, yeah, I really want to know.
yeah, and that invites. I go back to safety. I offered an activity with them that they readily accepted. Well, it was only one niece because the other one hadn't flown in yet, but we did an activity that even 3 years ago, you know, I don't think they would have felt safe enough in themselves or whatever to be in the activity together. And so when yeah, when we show open curiosity and openness in general, um, then we invite others to be in safety with us, I think. And I'm wondering if that's, I know I respond really well to questions, right, in a conversation. If that's um, learning questions to ask that are one safe, um, and to just are couched in a way that allow others to open up and be in exploration with themselves, just to sit back for a minute and go, huh, how am I with that? I'm not sure that, you and I were talking about this piece too, about really listening,
Hmm.
right? That's another thing is we were talking about the fact that so many times we jump in on each other when we're in conversation about something because we have this opinion or we have this piece of the subject matter that we know a lot about or we're really passionate about or whatever, that we'll jump in and we won't really listen to what the person has to say. So that's some of it too.
Yeah,
That
that's the not listening, not deeply listening. I
mhm,
think one of the uh, not tricks, but practices that I was taught long ago was to not think about a response until they fully finished talking. So you really can hear everything they say. Because I think we've all been in conversations where we've either done it, where we're busy planning our next response and they're still talking. So we miss a lot of what they say,
mhm,
or it's been done to us because you go like, well, I just said that, why weren't you listening? So then that kind of cuts off the willingness to share fully because they're not really listening, they're just trying to prove their point. So you
mhm.
go like, go away. I don't, that's not a conversation. That's sort of like a individual exposition. Here I am, this is my opinion.
Yeah,
So
I'm
I
on my
think,
soapbox.
well, it's a bad habit that I think a lot of, and it
Mhm,
has to do with right and wrong, I think, that somehow, you know, you win if you talk more, or you force people to accept your opinion instead of what we're saying today is, hey, this is about really being present to another person. So you get the full sense of who they are, their vitality and their essence. And when we do that, there isn't a right, wrong. There isn't a person who wins the conversation. So there's
yeah.
lots of what I would say is bad habits that our culture
Mhm,
has about communicating. And I think even if our title, Communicating with Love, it isn't, like, I think sometimes our love is, like you said, has boxes, has
mhm,
boundaries. And we may say, I love you, my niece, or my brother, my son. But do we want to know the whole of them? Which means stepping away from that role. This is a question Tantra asks. What if we treated every interaction as an opportunity, sorry, as an opportunity to honor the life-enhancing and life-generating essence of the other? What if everyone was our beloved, free to be what gave them life and had them exist as whole?
I think that's something that, I mean, just in looking around the season and with my children, especially, that's the wish that we accept each other for who we are and where we are, rather than trying to put each other in a box, with a nice neat bow and say, I need you to be this way.
This,
It's like,
and because you're not, then you're bad.
yeah, exactly. So that's definitely, um, I think very esoterically. So that is when I heard you say what Tantra said, what if we think in this way? That's a thread. And that is, I am threading the needle now, and that is what I want to sew into now, and into the future. That thread of complete acceptance, um, and giving every way of being a place. Um, and that's the uh, that's the new reality to sew. One of many one of many new realities to be with. Yeah, I mean, I gave my children a body of work to do this year, and myself, and they both accepted that. And so, they both kind of are grinding their teeth around it. because but how exciting is it? So let's look at it from a not teeth grinding way, um to, oh my gosh, they're willing to open themselves up into something new. So, wow. um what if we're to be with that with others? Are we willing to be with something new now?
Are we willing to step out of the box we see them in and see if they're what more there is about them? I think the whole point is life enhancing, life generating. And I don't think people are used to being asked that question. Even as I sit here, I go like, how do let's say I live in an apartment building. I was going like, how would it change how I say, hello, how are you? You know, because it feels like internally it's more me really intending this life enhancing response versus, oh, I'm fine. Thank you very much. How are you doing? So it really is kind of, it has to do with our internal intention about how we want to be in communication or connection. I think it's the connection that we're
Mm,
talking about here, right?
hmm. Yeah, definitely. And that's another thing I'm noticing, at least in my own little area of where I live. I've said this in every conversation I've had lately, that it seems like people are really, at least in my area, really going out of their way to be pleasant, going out of their way. And it's just very heartwarming, to be with someone who, you can see maybe they're not feeling great, or they have their own, I don't want to say weight of the world on their shoulders, but that's kind of the countenance is kind of people feel that. But at the same time, it's the both and, which is so beautiful to be able to witness. Um, just someone being kind, someone who, like, even at the grocery store, I put my little thing on the line and for the person behind me, and then they didn't have much, right? And it was, and it could talk about forming your own opinions. This person um, put their things down, and I was thinking, huh, they seemed sad or whatever. And then I noticed then they put their little thing down. Whereas I'm not sure, had I not done it, I'm not sure they would have done it. So that's a really small act of kindness, right? But they did, and I just looked up at them and smiled. And maybe I changed that person's whole reflection on their day just by that small
By the
act of
smile.
respect. Yeah, the
Hmm.
smile and the act of respect, that you care about their space. Um, yeah, by the smile. So yeah, so what else has she said?
Well, I'm just looking, the problem isn't technology. It is the human conditions become so fragmented by separation that even our relationships have been reduced to transactional exchanges. We often mistake connection for convenience, depth for efficiency, and belonging for the approval of sameness. So
Mm,
sometimes we don't say who we are, really thinking, you know,
mm,
um, or because we assume everybody expects us to act in a certain way, right?
mhm,
And it was sort of like my nieces and nephews when I was talking about what I was into. I was not talking as an auntie. I was just telling a group of family members kind of all the stuff I was into. And yes, it was weird for the average person then. Um, and it's just spirituality, but they being more interested in different spiritual things, they considered weird,
right.
because so so part of it is this. Then she says this shift begins with us. It requires a return to seeing relationships as the essence of existence, not as function or utilities. That's a nice thing. It calls us to move beyond the thingness of others and into the living, breathing experience of what it means to connect, to truly know and be known.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I
it's,
mean, I'll
yeah, go
go
ahead.
back to with my sister-in-law. And I know that's the thing. I don't like to use the word in-law, and I've been sharing that a lot lately because she's my sister. She's the sister I never had, right? I consider her that way. Um, to even, like I said, 3 years ago, they wouldn't have done this activity with me. And part of that was me continually coming forward and expressing who I am and what I'm doing in life without
Sorry.
any, you know, knowing that, knowing that they're going to think I'm weird. I knew that, I'm very unique. I knew they were going to think I was weird, but over time, they've come to accept in their own way that uniqueness. And now when we're together, I always get oh, it was so fun to be with you. And so I know now that I bring that ether of fun into our gatherings because of my weirdness and because I don't have an outcome. I don't, in our conversations, there's no outcome. And so just being with what, like we are here, right? In our living room or our kitchen. Um, so, so bringing that ether of fun and newness and not newness, curiosity, I guess, uh, not ordinary, being an ordinary conversation. Um, so what else did I want to say? I kind of lost my train of thought. Um,
Well, I'll pop in with one thing. I
yeah,
think I had an experience once that it was my intention that changed the other's experience. We had a family vacation every year, and I had one sister who was very conservative, and I was inside myself judging that I wish she thought like I did, that I would like to have conversations with her about what I want to talk about, right? So I finally said I went into one vacation, the beginning of it, and I said, I am banishing that thought from my head, and I'm just going to accept her as she is. So, come the end of the vacation, my sister says to me, "Oh, this was so wonderful. I really enjoyed it." And I'm thinking to myself, we didn't have any good conversations. So, I still have the judgment in my head, but I had managed in my behavior not to judge her or
um,
not to project judgment. And in that, it made all the difference for her in how she experienced what happened between us. So sometimes it's just choosing, choosing not to judge, choosing to be open to accepting whatever they are as the essence of who they are instead of getting pissed off about it, which I was doing with that sister. So sometimes it has a lot to do with what we send out as our
yeah.
intention. Because I think if you move into a conversation with the curiosity that you want to do or discovery or fun, then people pick that up and go, oh, okay, I'll go with that. It may not be how they do, but they do then have an experience of what it is just to play and be open to anything that pops up.
I just unearthed two memories out of that. Um, of ways of being in conversation. Um, I would I'm a retired teacher, um and I was always very intentional about how I treated our school office manager. And there were two of them that were really rough. I mean, you'd ask them how they were, and you'd get this tirade of how how bad everything was, right? And so I was just thinking to myself, I was making those people my project, right? Like you said, you set the intention. And in both cases, I ended up having such a deep friendship with these two particular women, um, gained their trust, uh, and man, I mean, I'm not saying that I went in with the intention of having them do favors for me, not that at all, but just giving them a place and giving who they were a place, and also seeing, oh my gosh, schools can't run without a good office manager, right? And so moving past the grumpy pantsness of the two of them and actually coming to love that part of them, um, and seeing how it served them, uh, just the we there was this depth of friendships, and them supporting me, um, in my endeavors, and them looking more into who I was as an educator, but as a person too. And yeah, it's amazing, um, how how we can be with people who look at life with the old analogy, the half full glass kind of people. And then this depth and richness of who they are just comes out. And one of them in particular then started to share about her family. And I was just like, oh man, what a beautiful existence you have outside of this setting, um, that I wouldn't have known about had I not accepted you completely for all that you are, you know. So yeah, it's fun to unearth. I have this image because I'm so visual of a crowbar, right? And that crowbar going into the frozen earth and digging up all of that really good soil in a person. Um, and and just loving all the sides of them, even the crusty ones. So I think I'm complete on that piece.
Well, it's just, it really, it makes me, fills my heart to hear that story of you willing to go beyond what they presented as their gruff exterior and the cup is half full. And because you went your willingness to move beyond that opened them up into showing them more of them.
Yeah.
And that was the key to the whole thing. And you could have completed 30 years there and only knowing them as the grumpy half cup full lady.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it also reminds me of doing template 3 on people, because I've done template 3 on
Mm.
one particular woman who we had a mutual grudge going on. And in writing template 3, I opened up to all parts of her as mother and girl and lover of gardening and dogs, and so by the time I finished that writing, that creation exercise, I no longer had the grudge at her. And the very interesting thing is it lessened her grudging. She still had to for a while do the at me. But by the time, within a few months, she wanted us to be in good relationship again. So it is a lot of, can I open up my heart to view the whole of them? But for all of you in the creation exercise, and that know the creation exercises, if there's somebody that you're having a problem with, or even want to know more deeply, try writing a template 3 first. I really
Yeah.
think it's an amazing process too, because it means when you write it, you open up to the more of who they are, because you're saying, you know, craving what this person is for me is creates. Oh, when I start craving, it's going to create questions about who they are. And it's going
Yeah,
to
that
maintain a different kind of dynamic.
yes, exactly.
Mhm.
You know, I was doing what I said I shouldn't do, thinking, but you pinged me um that I had a colleague who similar. And so um I could tell in her body language after I wrote the template, she was like, she looked at me, what the heck? Because I guess my countenance, and in this case, I used to go into classrooms a lot and talk with teachers because that was part of my job,
Mhm.
because I worked with their students in a different capacity. I wasn't, in this case, I wasn't in a classroom teacher. I pulled kids out to give them extra support on things. And so in this case, what I learned from the template was um, what an amazing educator she was. And so when I walked into, rather than what she wasn't doing for my students. And so when I walked into her room, I went in with that attitude, and she knew it right away. And I literally thanked her for what she had offered to my students. And she was shocked. She didn't know what to do with it. So yeah, it's so amazing. And from then on, there was a new respect for each other, and what we brought to the table. And I always told her, wow, I just keep learning something new from you, and I really appreciate it, even though, you know, well, and through time, I came to really value her opinions and her what she offered as an educator. So, and her countenance changed also, just like you said. So,
And I was even thinking of the small thing of really listening. Because I remember
yeah.
one time my daughter was probably 8 or 9, and she was one of these little kids that was a Jabberwocky when she got home, right? Blah, 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 blah. So obviously, I didn't listen deeply to everything she was saying. And one day she said, she stopped me, she put her hand on my jaw, and she says, "No, Mom, really listen." And I was caught. And I didn't realize that I've got to get dinner done and all this stuff. She really understood I really wasn't listening. And
Mhm.
I wonder what I missed now. So it's like take the minute, listen, just like we said about when you're in a discussion back and forth. Listen to them in the moment so they get that they have your attention. Because I think sometimes people who kind of nag at you like that, they simply want your attention. And so we think we ignore them. And then, you know, in
Just to
any case,
remember, we all want to be seen
we all want to be seen.
and
So,
heard.
yeah. So it's about time to close down, even though we came on late. But I want to give you one last quote from the language of creation. Our present language base is object oriented, not connection oriented. Our thoughts further disconnect us from ourselves and each other, excluding more than including, narrowing our life experience. So let's make that different for each other for the rest of this holiday and maybe all of 2025 is listen deeply with compassion for what, and so that you get to know the essence of the other and make sure that everything that you communicate and connect with is life enhancing and life fulfilling. Any last thing you want to say, Miss?
No, you said that really, really well. Yeah, carrying a new willingness to be with many, many different perspectives with compassion.
And appreciation and
Yeah.
gratitude, because it's
Yes.
really fun to learn more about other people and be in a stronger relationship with them. Okay,
Yes.
thank you, everybody. Thanks for
Thank
listening,
you.
and we'll see you next week.